All right, wine lovers, ready to unlock the allure of Pinot Noir.
Let's dive in.
We're going deep on this one, folks. We've got a source that's basically the ultimate Pinot Noir playbook, and trust me, this grape, it's got a story to tell.
It really does.
So buckle up. By the end of this deep dive, you'll know exactly why Pinot Noir earns a prime spot on every wine enthusiast list.
Absolutely. And what's so captivating about Pinot is that so much of his reputation comes down to its, well, delicacy. We're talking about a thin-skinned grape here, especially when you compare it to something like, say, Cabernet Sauvignon.
Okay, yeah, I've heard that thin-skinned description before, but always kind of thought it was just a fancy way of saying it's uh, delicate. Is there something more to it?
There is. I mean, that thinner skin, it does mean lighter color, that's true. But here's the thing, it also means fewer tannins. And tannins are those compounds that can make some red wines taste dry, almost astringent. You know, that feeling like your mouth is puckering up a bit.
Yeah, like you just took a big gulp of super strong black tea.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it. And Pinot, with those naturally lower tannins, it ends up having this smoother, almost silkier texture on the palate. People often describe it as elegant, which I think is a pretty fitting word. But there's one more crucial thing that thin skin does.
What's that?
It's like a window. It lets the environment have more of an impact on the grape's flavor. The soil, the climate, even the weather in a particular year, all of it gets absorbed and reflected in the final wine.
So Pinot Noir, it's like it's soaking up the essence of where it's grown.
Precisely.
Hmm.
Which brings us to one of those wine words you might have heard thrown around.
Terroir.
Terroir, yeah.
Yeah.
It's all about how a wine reflects its origin, its sense of place. Imagine tasting two Pinot Noirs side by side. One from, let's say, California, sunshine in a glass, ripe berries, maybe a hint of vanilla from those oak barrels. And then you try one from, oh, I don't know, Oregon, cooler climate, maybe some volcanic soil in the mix, and suddenly you're getting earthy notes, maybe even a whiff of forest floor. That right there is terroir at work.
See, this is what gets me excited. Two completely different experiences,
Yeah.
all because of where those grapes are from. And speaking of which, our source here, it takes us on a global tour of Pinot Noir production.
Yeah.
You've got the classics, like Burgundy, of course.
And-
But then, things get really interesting. New Zealand, Oregon, even
Brazil.
Brazil.
Yeah.
Brazil, that was a curveball, I have to admit. Didn't expect to see that one.
You know, when you think about what Pinot Noir loves, those cool, temperate climates, it starts to make a bit more sense. I mean, sure, Brazil has its fair share of sunny beaches, but regions like Serra Gaúcha, with its higher altitudes and cooler temperatures, they can actually be surprisingly suitable. I think it just goes to show how far people will go to grow this finicky grape.
It's like a worldwide love affair with Pinot Noir. But, okay, let's get to the good stuff. What does it actually taste like? This source, it goes beyond just saying red fruit, although those flavors are definitely there. Your cherries, your raspberries.
Absolutely, but then it gets really nuanced. You might find mushroom, spice. There's often this, some people describe it as wet leaves, which I know it sounds strange, but until you experience it in a really well-made Pinot Noir.
I'm intrigued, but I'll be honest, a little terrified of that wet leaves note.
Trust me, it's way more evocative than it sounds. And this is where that concept of terroir we talked about really comes into play. A Pinot from Burgundy, known for those limestone soils, it might have those earthy, almost mushroomy notes. But then a New Zealand Pinot, often grown in volcanic soils, that might lean towards brighter, juicier fruit flavors.
So even if you think you know Pinot Noir, there's a whole world of regional variations to discover.
Yeah.
Although this source doesn't shy away from how challenging it is to grow this, shall we say, diva grape, it's picky about climate, susceptible to diseases. Not an easy one to work with, apparently.
And that's the thing about Pinot Noir, isn't it? The very things that make it so demanding, they're also what give it that incredible allure in the glass. It's a testament to the winemaker's skill, to all that care that goes into every single step.
It's like that delicious Pinot we get to enjoy. It's practically a miracle it even exists.
Speaking of unlikely successes, we have to circle back to Brazil's venture into the world of Pinot Noir. I have to say, I'm ready for some surprises here.
Oh, you won't be disappointed. What they're doing down there is really impressive. You see, while a tropical climate, it's not exactly ideal for Pinot Noir. There are dedicated producers, especially in that Serra Gaúcha region we mentioned, who are proving that it can be done.
It's all about those higher altitudes, right? Like they've gone searching for these hidden pockets of, like, Pinot perfect weather.
Precisely. Remember how we talked about Pinot Noir craving those cooler temperatures? Well, the higher you go, the cooler it gets. So even within a region, vineyards planted at higher elevations, they have this natural advantage in terms of replicating those ideal conditions.
Fascinating.
It's not just about location, though. Our source also delves into how producers are getting strategic with the types of Pinot Noir they're choosing to grow.
So they're tailoring the grape to the environment rather than trying to force it to fit.
Exactly. The source specifically mentions experimentation with different varieties and clones. See, there are actually hundreds of slightly different versions of Pinot Noir out there. It's kind of like Pinot Noir 2.0. So winemakers can select the ideal clone, so to speak, to thrive in their specific microclimate or their soil type.
Well, I had no idea there was that much diversity within Pinot Noir itself. That's a whole other level of like winemaking expertise.
It really is, and it's that kind of dedication that elevates Brazilian Pinot Noir beyond just a novelty. It's not just, oh, look, we're growing Pinot in Brazil. They're showcasing what this grape can achieve in a whole new context, and the results, as our source points out, are incredibly promising. But, we've talked a lot about growing the grapes. Let's talk about what we do with them once they're in our glass. Our source hints at some really interesting food pairings, and one in particular caught my eye.
Oh, you mean the Pinot Noir and sushi pairing? Yeah, I have to admit, that one threw me for a loop a little bit. It seems so counterintuitive, doesn't it?
It does, right. You wouldn't think it would work, but there's a reason sommeliers often recommend it. It's all about Pinot Noir's lighter body and those bright red fruit notes. They actually complement the delicate flavors of the fish incredibly well.
It's almost like they're speaking the same language,
Yeah.
the Pinot and the sushi, but in totally different dialects.
That's a great way to put it. And it really underscores that Pinot Noir, it's not about these big, bold flavors that hit you over the head. It's about nuance. It's about balance. Those subtle connections that make you appreciate both the wine and the food on a whole other level.
This whole deep dive, it really has been about nuance, hasn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, from those thin-skinned grapes soaking up the essence of their terroir to the almost obsessive level of care from winemakers in like unexpected places like Brazil. I
Yeah.
feel like we've only just scratched the surface.
And that's the beauty of it. This deep dive, it's given us a taste.
Yeah.
But the real exploration, it starts now.
So what you're saying is it's time to track down some Pinot Noir and start tasting.
Exactly. Seek out those different regions we talked about. Don't be afraid to experiment with those food pairings. And most importantly, trust your own palate.
I love that. It's not about memorizing tasting notes. It's about discovering what you personally enjoy.
Precisely. And who knows, you might even stumble upon a hidden gem, a producer, or a region that speaks to your senses in a way you never expected.
Now that is an exciting thought. Well, folks, there you have it, your crash course in appreciating all things Pinot Noir.
Until next time, may your glass be full of delicious discoveries.
And may your curiosity always lead you to something new and fascinating. Cheers to that. Thanks for joining us on this Pinot Noir adventure.